Welcome to the next video in the core system general ledger configuration for Sage Intacct. In this session, we will introduce you to journals and books. Let's take a look. Inside the system, we'll go over to General Ledger and we'll go to Setup. And one thing you won't notice here is the setup for your default accrual book. That's because that happens behind the scenes and that is all dependent on your company configuration. So we're going to take a quick look over in company, and I'm at top level for all of this, and I'll go into configuration company under setup. And one of the first thing that's going to be established depending on your subscription to Sage Intacct is what types of books you can have. So if you have the construction edition, you're going to be limited to one book, one reporting method called accrual based. There are other scenarios if you are purchasing just a general business license where you're going to have the option to also do accrual or cash or both. In this video, we're going to talk specifically about accrual. So that's where this gets set up over in accounting in your company information. In your subscription out of the box, the system is going to provide you in General Ledger with a bunch of default journals. So if I go into Setup Journals, you'll notice there's several journals in here, and you'll notice that under book, all of the books are labeled under the accrual book. So that's going to happen automatically for you. And you can most certainly create your own journal names and things like that in here, and you could tie them to the accrual book. That'll be your only option in the construction edition. And so this is going to be provided for you out of the box already in the system in Intacct. So one of the things to consider is although they break out all the different journals here separately, and you're going to learn in the next set of videos for your configuration how these get defaulted in each of the different modules, for example, accounts payable journal, although these are all separate journals in the system, it's all going to be reported under one mass accrual book. So when you're running your financial statements, when you're running general ledger transaction reports, you're always going to be able to report these all within one consolidated area. But one of the big benefits of having separate journals is when you are troubleshooting, when you are digging in and you want to see specific transactions, you can filter and condition by these symbols here by each journal. And when viewing transactions, you'll notice I can come into here and just view transactions that are specific to accounts payable. So that really helps you navigate around the system. And that is what I would say is one of the big benefits of having these separate journals in the system. So a couple things to consider when you're reviewing your existing journals that come with the system is make sure you have a couple of these journals set up. And if you don't, we can go ahead and get those created. But one journal you're going to need for sure that sometimes doesn't come default out of the box is this WIP journal here. There's going to be some functionality on the construction side that you're going to be able to generate your own WIP accounting entries, your over under billings, and we need to know which WIP journal it goes to. So you should have one defined here. Notice I have one in here called WIP journal, and it's very easy to create. Basically, you're defining a title, and then we'll talk about these boxes in a second. So just make sure you have that set up. You usually have a symbol called WIP J for your WIP journal. So just make sure of that. The other thing to consider, especially when you're creating your own journals, is do you want transactions from this particular journal to be eligible to be marked up and billed through project billing? So if you have the need for time and material invoicing, there are some times when you do want these entries that you create directly in General Ledger to also be eligible to be marked up and put on a time and material invoice. And the way the system determines that is inside the setup of these journals. So for example, in the, let's say, payroll journal here, if I click edit in the payroll journal, you'll notice there's a button here for enable project billing flag. And this is going to tell the system, if this is checked, to include any transactions entered here over into my available transactions to mark up and bill in the system. By default, this is a great example of one where the payroll journal typically isn't enabled because we're going to bill through the actual time entries that come through the time and expense module. So we don't want hours to be billed through time and expense, but then also charge the customer for the job cost amount for that same labor entry. That would be double billing. So in this scenario, we don't want to send these GL entries over. But there are some other cases where you do. For example, if you're coming in and you're making some miscellaneous direct cost entries to a project directly in here that haven't been entered anywhere else in the system, this might be a transaction journal that you do want to send over to enable project billing on. So you can see this is checked here as well. There's also another scenario here where we only want the system to record entries in this journal. Accounts payable journal, accounts receivable journal, cash disbursement. Those are all areas that would be the case. We shouldn't be making any adjusting entries or additional entries in those journals. So if I go into accounts payable journal, I would turn this on, disallow direct posting. That will prevent anyone from just going into here and making entries in your accounts payable journal manually. Okay, so those are the two options that you have here as well. But you'll find which ones you're actually going to use. In some cases, you can make journals that you're not using inactive. I wouldn't recommend deleting the journals. You could, but best practice would be to actually, hey, you know what? We don't have interentity, or anything like that. So let's go into here and let's just make it inactive. And this is going to prevent anybody from entering into it and also showing it on your list. So it'll clean it up a little bit. So most people don't use every one of these journals in the system. And if you want, you can make them inactive. There is one more optional journal that can be added to the accrual book, and that's going to be what's called the adjustment journal. So this is an optional adjustment journal, but this is an area where, let's say after the month has been closed and Intacct, you get some adjusting entries, maybe from your accountants or from an audit, and you want to separate these entries. Maybe on a financial statement, you want to show, closed balance, and then you want to show an adjustment column, and then you want to show adjusted balances after close. So you can elect to record those entries into an adjustment journal. And in that scenario, you'll be able to always break those transactions out independently. The one caveat to that is there is some extra work in setting up your financial statements to make sure those financial statements include the adjustment journal either in the same column or in another column. So there is another scenario where a lot of clients won't enter these types of entries into an adjustment journal. They'll just go directly into like the general journal or something like that, because you can also flag them in the reference column or something like that that says it's an adjustment entry. So that's up to you guys how you want to handle that. Best practices would be, we would probably recommend just making the entries in the general journal entry. And with that being said, when you are recording miscellaneous entries in general ledger, you do want to keep it centralized as far as where you do those types of entries. You don't want to be just jumping around and doing them in all these journals. We would recommend as best practice to either record the entries in the general journal, or if it's project related, include them in the project direct cost journal. So these would be the two miscellaneous direct entry journals that we would recommend recording directly into, either the project direct cost journal or the general journal. And the next area we're going to talk about is the concept of what's called user-defined books. In general ledger, you do have the ability to create what's called user-defined books and have these books set up to record financial information that is outside of your, let's call it the real accrual book. And with a construction edition, you do get a bunch of user-defined books already set up for you. So let's go take a look at some of these. So that's under Setup, User-Defined Books. And you'll notice there's some project-related books already set up in here. For example, contracts, purchase orders, subcontracts. These are used, and all of these books are available on financial statements. So the idea there is with Intacct, not only do you have the capability of running your traditional financial statements, trial balance, income statement, balance sheet, but because Intacct is dimension-based in our general ledger, you have the ability to run financial statements by dimensions. And again, dimensions are a project, a customer, a vendor, a cost code. So with that being said, if you're going to run some financial reporting for projects, for example, you might want to see things like contract amounts in there. You might want to see committed costs that we haven't been received an AP invoice for yet. These books provide that outlet for us automatically in the system. So when you get into some of the further videos we're going to talk about, for example, in the transaction definition class, we're going to talk about how you can set up a purchase order transaction def and have an entry recorded in the system when that purchase order is written as a committed cost. And I'll show you in a second on a project overview financial statement where we can see now what's been committed, what is our actual cost from the accrual book, and you can report all that together. So most of the time you won't need to create any new user-defined books unless there's something unique you want to track in your system, but it is used for that. The big thing to come away with here is this does not affect your accrual book out of the box. It is not going to make a true general ledger accounting accrual entry or cash entry for that matter in your system. It's only used to add onto in your financial statements. Okay, well, let's take a peek at that real quick. A really good way to see that is in general ledger under all in financial reports. And what you'll notice is if I scroll down here, one of the good examples is this project overview report. So if I go into the behind the scenes here in the project overview, I won't dig in too detailed here, but under columns in this financial statement design, you'll notice there's some different columns. There's one for commitments, which would be your purchase orders, and there's one for total cost. And you'll notice here that for the commitments column, we can say, don't include accrual entries because it's not purchase order isn't an accrual entry yet, but include those other books. And then vice versa for total cost, which is your job to date actual costs, we want to include the accrual book. And so what happens is it kind of looks like this. So financial reports, and I'll go to project overview and I'll hit this HTML and I'll do a preview here. I'll just do as of today. And what you'll notice is now I can see by jobs, this is a financial report again, I can see by jobs different columns, and these are pulling from different areas in the system. Total billed, total costs are pulling from actual accrual entries. If I click on it, it's going to show me all my revenue from the GL, and it's going to show me from the accrual book. And you'll notice here's their ARJ journal, right? If I click on commitments, if I want to see what purchase order has been written for this project, I can click on that. Still showing me general ledger entries, but they're coming from the subjournal, which is one of those user-defined books that is tied to one of the user-defined books that we went into earlier. So that's basically an overview of what the user-defined books are going to do for you. Now, of course, if there's other unique needs that you'll discover during your deployment, these can be set up as well, and we can walk you through that. So, but those user-defined books is a really handy tool to kind of expand how you want to run your financial reporting in the system.